tolerance. Unfortunately, in today's world, there seems to be a huge trust deficit. When we open the TV, you can see the shrill of voices of dissent, the fight, war cries, be it in the social field, whether in the cultural or religious field. So we say that learn what is tolerance. The concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, how can we accept each other with all the deficiencies and live in this only world that has been given to us by the Almighty God. So tolerance is something we always tell that learn to practice this. This makes us actually human. And the third pillar is, we call it generosity. As a matter of fact, Bhagavad Gita says, he who has only can give. Therefore, it is important to have. If you have got diligence, dexterity, alacrity, devotion, determination, competency, knowledge, and skill set, then you must go out there to produce. There is something called a material world. And that is the reason, creation of wealth is considered to be one of the Purusharthas which Lord Krishna articulated in Bhagavad Gita. And you has only can give. Therefore, it is also important to have the human qualities of empathy, kindness, compassion, the ability to care. So when we tell the people that what makes a person really successful in life is, on one side, he must have the competency and domain knowledge, and on the other side, when he becomes a fantastic human being, he begins to shine like 1,000 rising sun. So this is something we say, generosity, saying good words, etc. And the last pillar is, we call it mindfulness, a theme which has been picked up by none other than Lord Sri Buddha from Rig Veda. Mindfulness simply means living in the present. It is said that people live in three worlds. A man is always crying about things which he could not do in the past. And if he's not doing that, then he is worrying about the future which is yet to be born. Is chakkar ke andar kehte hai ki we forget to live in the present, forgetting the very fact that it is what you do in present is what is going to become your future. The mindfulness is small things, mindful of what you are doing. If you're mindful of that, you can create a harmonious coexistence and truly want to become somebody who is worthy and become truly. So this is the philosophy of carving talent. So now it is time, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to invite the keynote speaker, Professor Rajiv Kumar. Sir, may I now request you to kindly take the mantle and enlighten us with your words. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Devidasan, for giving a beautiful introduction and the vision of carving talent. And I also thank Carving Talent for giving me opportunity to share what we are doing at AICTE. I also thank our fellow panelist, Dr. Raj Agarwal, who introduced me to Carving Talent, and Dr. Kamlesh Mishra, Dr. B. Bhattacharya, Vinny Johari, Professor A.N. Bhattacharya, and many more panelists and participants to this workshop. So first of all, I hope everybody and the family of each and everyone is safe. They all are taking due care. And first of all, I will like to share what is AICTE. I will like to tell in brief what is AICTE and what in the present situation, what we are doing to cope with the challenges posed by this Corona-19. Now, AICTE is basically a regulator, but in the recent time, it has changed its space or changed its duties, you can rather say, and now we are more facilitator than regulator. Although we are regulating more than 10,500 institutions in India, management is also one of them, apart from technical education, when we call engineering, management. Pharmacy was there, but recently pharmacy has been given to Pharmacy Council of India by Supreme Court, and polytechnics are there. This is arts and crafts. There are many areas which AICTE is dealing, and there are around 10,500 institutions. Now, recently in 2017, we have made an agenda of AICT that we call the quality agenda of AICT. What Professor Devidasan was discussing, that human values, basically, he was talking about the human values. And we also realized that it is an important area where, and it should be a part of the education system, not only the higher education system, but also the school education also, secondary and school level school education system. But because we are dealing the technical education, we have introduced this universal human values as a mandatory program in technical education. Presently, we have introduced it in undergraduate programs, but soon, because we have to create the manpower for taking or for taking classes or organizing workshop for these human values program. So we are presently training the trainers, and this has been introduced in all the engineering college imparting undergraduate programs. So this is the one initiative. I think this is in line with the what is the vision of the carving talent, sir, if you agree with me. Now, I will also request, sir, you please just go through our website and see what we are doing in this universal human values. And I offer you that if you have interest in that, you give your suggestion how we can improve this curriculum, how implementation also. So this thing can also be worked out because we have a common agenda, I think, what I can understand in this conversation. Like now, apart from this induction program, and 1 minute more I will take for introducing this induction program. This is a 21 days program. When a student is coming to the technical education system, there is no classes for 21 days. He has to undergo all such things, and there are two parts. First is he starts his day at 6:30 or 7 in the morning, and up to 7. There are a lot of activities during this program. No lecturing. Only no lecturing. That is very important. That is no lecturing, a lot of activities, because in what is happening in the education system, particularly in technical education system, students start preparing for the competitive examination at their 8th level, 9th, at the 9th standard or 10th standard. So they are totally cut off from the society. They are totally cut off from the sports, and they have some talent also in that. They are also not practicing that thing also. So they are totally cut off all such things, and they are only confined to their study, and they are just aspiring to get the admission in the best college of the India or abroad. This is the ambition. They don't know why they are taking the admission in that college. They even don't know that. So this is why this program has been introduced. And before introducing this program, we personally attended this program at several IITs, and we have seen what type of the problems students are facing when they are entering in the technical education system. So all such types of problems we are trying to address through this induction program. And in the next 3rd and 4th semester, there is universal human value. We try to realize the students that you try to understand self, then you try to understand nature, and then you try to understand family. All such type of things, they are part of the universal human value. So this was just a reference to the induction program. Now there are another, because mostly, as I can see, the title of this workshop is Meeting the New Challenges, Revisiting Management Education in India. So particularly a few minutes I will devote on management education. Now, due to this COVID-19, our management institutions and the students, they are facing a different type of problem. First, the institutions are facing how to admit the students, because the deadlines which has been specified by the Supreme Court or the regulators, they are not able to meet. This is one part. Another part is that students, those who are admitted in the management institutions, they are not able to pay their fees because banks are closed. They are not able to take the loan. And so all types of problem. One is on the part of the institutions, another is on the part of the students. So how to make the balance among all such problems? We are coming out. We have requested all the management institutions, please don't press for the fees unless this situation becomes normal, banks start dispersing loans, and students even can go to the, because in some of the areas they cannot even move. So these are the problems. We have requested all our management institutions, please bear for some time, please try to understand the problems of our students. And also we have changed the dates. Now we have changed the dates. Now existing students, those who are in the already admitted in the B schools, their classes previously they were, I think, starting from the 30 in the month of June. Now they will start from the 1st July, right? And last date of admission in the B schools that we have changed now, it is 31st July. And students can withdraw their names from the technical in these management institutions up to 25th July with full fee minus 1,000 rupees. This is the Supreme Court ruling. And academic session for newly admitted students will start from the 1st August. And the last date of the admissions in all B schools, that will be 15th of August. That we have notified yesterday, and that notification has gone to all B schools. And we have, as I discussed, that I have already told that we have requested institution not to hike any fee. We have asked the institute to start the session in online mode also. If situations is not, if this lockdown is not open and we institutes are not able to commence the classes in the face-to-face mode, then they can start even classes in the online mode. And we have also asked the institutions, even if they have not conducted the examination of the previous batches, then UGC has given some freedom in their guidelines that was released on 29th of April, that they can even conduct their examination following these guidelines. So we all the freedoms we have given to our B schools. Recently, yesterday, we were in the office, Raj Agarwalji was saying, so this yesterday we issued all such notifications. Now, we have revised the curriculum of all these, whether it is management or it is the technical education, undergraduate or postgraduate courses. And that important part is that we have reduced credits, number of credits in B school, in management education as far as MBA and PGDM programs are concerned. And main emphasis is Indian case studies. And we are conducting workshops in coordination with IMA. Professor Raj Agarwal is coordinating all such workshops, and we have already conducted 4 to 5 workshops across India, and many more are in pipeline. We will soon conduct, we will resume these workshops, and I will request through this medium that we can conduct even online workshop if possible. We can conduct this online workshop and we can resume this activity also. And we have also framed the guidelines to start management education in distance mode also. So first time we have given an advertisement, and we have received several applications, several institutes, they have applied for starting courses in online mode. And there are certain parameters, those who will qualify will soon notify them, and they will be given permission to start management courses in online mode also. And whatsoever we are doing here as far as management is concerned, all these guidelines and regulations, they are being framed in consultation with management experts also. And we are also promoting management B schools to, or encouraging them for accreditation also. And we are facilitating such institutions, and we are promoting them for accreditation. And all our approvals in AICTE, they are online. There is minimum human intervention, and 70% approvals. There are 10,500 institutions, 70% in institutions, more than 7,000 institutions, they are getting approvals through system only. Where there are some problem, there is some reduction of seat, or there is some addition of programs, only then human intervention, little human intervention is required. We are just doing that, but 70% cases, they are on the self-declaration basis, computer is giving approval to them. So these are the some of the initiatives AICT has taken as far as management education is concerned. We are now even trying to eliminate the physical presence of the in the expert visit committees. So we are now, yesterday we have tested, we have made a system with all these visits to the institutes by the regulators, they will be done online also. There will be no human in when we are conducting these expert visits this time. So we got 80% success yesterday. That was a trial for these visits. And there are some shortcomings. In a day or two, we will remove all these shortcomings, and all such visits we are going to conduct online this time also. So these all are the initiatives we are taking in this. We are learning, and we are taking advantage of the time we got in this COVID-19 to start the things differently, so that as soon as the situation becomes normal and this uh, lockdown is lifted, our institutions, they can function normally. And another challenge that is that is at the side of the students also, like they are worried about their job. You also mentioned in your initial remark also. So we are also connecting them to the companies. We are asking the companies, if you have some free products, if you can provide your products free of cost, which provides skills to our students in trust areas like IoT, AI, and machine learning, then you provide these courses free of cost to our students. And you will be surprised to know that we started 10 days back, we started this portal, and more than 15 lakh students, they have registered for the free programs. They are the UG students, they are the PG students, they are the management students. And today we got a call from a company startup. He said, sir, that we were not expecting that 30,000 students at a time will come to our portal to take this course. Please, now we cannot accommodate more than 30,000. You please take out our name from the portal. So we don't want to register many more candidates. So this is how we are helping our students to connect with the industry. Internship portal, we have an internship portal where all the industries, they're posting their internship, and it is a matchmaking type of portal. And all MSMEs, they are a part of that portal. And even our Honorable Finance Minister announced this internship in the urban bodies this time in this budget speech, that we are also managing that thing also. On the part of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, we are managing this internship also for graduates. We have prepared the portal, and the portal, in a day or two, we are going to launch this portal for the internship. Even the management students, they can register on that portal. And we are also worried about the how we can connect our students to the industry. This is the main thing we are worried about at this time. We are talking to our industry friends. We are asking whether you can provide some courses which you can directly take these students to their courses. They need not to undergo this training when they are selected. So these all such a short type of things we are doing at the AICT. Now, from this forum, I also request you ask if you have some industry connects also, please post maximum number of internship on our portal, because it is not only the responsibility of the AICT or the regulator of the government of India, it is the responsibility of each and every Indian, that our students, our kids, they should get industry exposure also, so they are recognized in the world market. As far as one thing you also mentioned, that point, around 4 to 5 lakh students, they are stuck abroad also, because they are taking this as they are undergoing some educational program in foreign countries. So now they are struck. But for the next year, I hope it is an opportunity for our Indian institutions, whether they are the B institutions or the engineering institutions, that these students, definitely they are going to, such type of student that from the next year, they will take admissions in Indian schools. So we have to prepare, and we have to provide world-class facilities, world-class curriculum, and the world-class pedagogy to these students, so that this support, if we take we take this opportunity as a challenge, and for then all our the program of the government of India, the study of India program will be also be a success. So I hope this is, although this is a great problem, but every problem comes with a solution and the opportunity. Our schools, our colleges, they will take this challenge and use use the maximum what they can provide to our students, and they will convert it to an opportunity. With all these words, I once again thanks organizers for inviting me to this workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for coming and then giving us the complete detailing of what you do and the way forward. And we thank you from the core of our heart for taking time out and joining us. Thank you so much. Now, let's begin our panel discussion. I would now invite Dr. Kamlesh Mishra to chair our first panel, which deals with the challenges we are facing. And now, Dr. Kamlesh Mishra is a versatile personality, a fine economist, an academician, who has left his early success, which normally people wouldn't do. After clearing his IAS preliminary, he decided to go to USA. He has done different types of education and has worked with governments, taking PhDs, went on to become the founding vice chancellors, so on and so forth. So I would now request Sir Dr. Kamlesh Mishra to kindly take the chair of the panel number 1 and introduce your panelists and then begin the discussion. Dr. Kamlesh Mishra.
Thank you, Devidasanji. Thank you so much. We have 2 sessions today. This is the first panel, and I'm going to be chairing this panel. And we are hoping that we'll finish it on time, and I'll try and finish it in time so that we can move on with the second panel. So on the first panel, along with me, there are 3 important people who are going to be talking more on the challenges that we face because of the COVID-19. We have with us Dr. Raj Agarwal. Dr. Raj Agarwal is the director of IMA, CME, a person who has written extensively. That's one of his habits. He writes a lot, and that's good for an academician. We have Professor A.N. Bhattacharya, who is professor and chair marketing at SOIL. And we have Mohammad Salman, who is the director of SOIL, who is with us. He was also the senior vice president of HCL Info Systems before. Let me welcome you all, and thank you for being with us. Let me try and put this in a perspective, and then the best way would be that I'll give each of you some time, and you can make your initial comments so that we all have whatever we wanted to say, and then we can open it to question and answers, and hopefully we will be able to answer a lot of questions. In my view, the way that I look at it is that the speed at which everything happened. Now I'm so scared when the Prime Minister comes on the television at 8 o'clock. And when he says Bara Vijay, then I really get scared, okay? Because it just happened abruptly. And the biggest problem is that it was so fast, and we had to shift gears so fast from face-to-face educational system to a online or so-called online educational system, that we had so little time to really even to reflect back and plan anything as to what are the risks and the opportunities that are there in this kind of a abrupt shift. However, having said that, I feel that one of the biggest challenges that has happened and that we will face is that there is a complete shattering of the whole learning environment itself. This has actually destroyed the whole learning environment, learning model as it existed before. So I don't feel that we're going to come back to where we left. The question is, how far are we going to go from where we left? It's a question of the whole ecosystem of education. Everything is changed. And everything changed not because we wanted it, but change was thrust on us. And today, everyone, including the regulators, the people who have been opposing, everybody is in for online education. Not before this. And we don't know once we reach to normal whether we will be again asked to say, hold on, you cannot do this. You will have to wait, and you will have to go through a process to do this. So we don't know what's going to happen. But the whole ecosystem is completely going to be different. What it has also done, there are a couple of things that have changed. The relationship between stakeholders has changed. The relationship between students and teachers, the relationship between staff and teachers, the relationship between ownership and administrators, everything has gone through a major shift. One of our tasks will be to try and rebuild those relationships. And we really don't know what form of relationships are going to be built when we really start coming back. Because we are not connected to our students. At this point, even if people are on Zoom and they are saying that there is online education going on, actually it is just a shift from face-to-face class lecture to a lecture on Zoom, which is a very crude form of online education. If we believe that this is online education, then we are in for big trouble, because it is not. It's something that we are just trying to do. There is also a lot of talk that, once we are over with this and we come back, we will try and rebuild everything, but we will need to maintain the social distances that are going to be required. But I feel that there is a bigger problem. The bigger problem is that we need to have social reconstruction. The whole structure of the society is going to go through a major shift. We don't know how much shift is going to be there and how much of social reconstruction is required. The system of belief, the system of faith, the system of working together, everything is going to go through a dramatic change. The society as a whole is going to change. We already heard that TCS has already announced that for the next 2 years, they will have more than 30-40% of their employees working from home. If such things are going to happen, then the society will have to reconstruct its ways of working together. And it's always true that education institutions have always played a very important role in reconstruction of societies. So where do we fit in and how we are going to do it? Finally, I want to leave with one thought. I think it's time for educational institutions to think beyond problems. I think we will have to come back to our original motto of creating sort of a system which is more on social wealth creation. So when Tata's were setting up Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, It was not designed for profits. It was designed to create social wealth. I think it may be time after this that we need a very, very powerful system to create such kind of social wealth in the society that can sustain these kind of problems that will come. In order to do these things, I think the kind of leadership that we will need in academics is going to be very, very challenging. We will need to have new kind of leadership. So with that initial thought, let me now invite Dr. Raj Agarwal to give us his thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Misra. This idea of this social wealth, this is really very important in prevailing circumstances. Here, this issue is this, how this education, entire education and management education that has been affected very severely, and what kind of approach which we are having. If we go about this online education, so we see that even before this crisis, all over the world, there was an emphasis on online education. But in few parts, this online education, by and large, in a blended mode, this was quite nicely developed, and that was known as EdTech. And also here, what was happening, that it was mainly confined in language app, virtual tutoring, this video conferencing, online software, etc. And if we see the expenditure also in 2019, somewhere around all over the world, this $18 billion were spent, and this is supposed to increase up to this $350 billion. Now, here in India, at school level, this Baiju definitely is a good experiment. But at a management level, and specifically in technical education management level, this has yet to be developed. In few part of the words like this Harvard, like this Imperial College, like this MIT, they have developed a socially structured program. I'll use this word, this socially structured program, where they know that within this management education, what are the components which needs to be included. Here, this is this learning outcome, how learning outcomes are going to be very, very strong. And based on this learning outcome, how this quality is going to be enhanced. Now, all of a sudden, what has happened that this online school of Wuhan, this is what that alternative was, only that how this large number of students, somewhere around 250 million, they are going to be a part of this online education because of this crisis. Likewise, this LARC is Singapore-based organization, this ByteDance, as well as this Alibaba, this distance learning program in a form of this DingTalk, they have started. But again, issue is this, that these are more technology oriented. Now, improve the technology in a form of this unlimited video conferencing time, include this timing in terms of this translation work, etc. But this content part, and specifically content part, if we see large number of universities in our country, this more than this 993 and 39,931 colleges, and out of which this 10,000, more than 10,000 are coming within the purview of this AICT. Here, this is what that there is a need, although this will take time, that how this is what that right kind of this content, right kind of this quality, this is going to be developed, This will take time, there is impact, but definitely over the period of time. And what is most important part, as Dr. Misra has pointed out, that when this kind of crisis is going to be over, then what kind of system we are going to have? Fine, social distancing maybe is going to be a norm unless until vaccine is not going to be discovered. So maybe 1 year, and then how we are going to adopt the good part of this online learning, and how we can have this blended mode of learning. These are the issues, these are the challenges. So impact is very widespread, but how this impact is going to be taken in a positive direction with the support of this regulatory bodies, with the support of this educationist, this is a big challenge and big issue.
Okay.
So these are my initial.
Thank you, Dr. Agrawal. We have one panelist, Dr. Vinny Jowhari, who unfortunately has to leave for another engagement. So before she leaves, Vinny, is it possible for you to give your comments at this time before you leave, so that we have your thoughts with us?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Mishra, and thanks for inviting me for this discussion. Yes, it's during this COVID-19 crisis, a lot of changes happened, and they happened very abruptly, bringing the entire business and our lives to a standstill. And nobody was prepared for such changes. Nobody ever imagined the whole world will come to a stop and people will be confined to their homes. And this crisis has led to rethinking about the way we live our lives and also the way we work. And also, I think it impacts not only businesses, but education, not only management, but all disciplines. Because every single business and engineering, whether it's an engineering institution or any other discipline, has to think through how do we prepare ourselves for a world of tomorrow where such uncertainties we do not know when they will spring up. So, from a perspective of management education, sustainability will have to be built in. We have seen how, and also, over reliance on just few countries for managing supply chains is not going to work. So, each country will have to invest in competence building, has to be self-sustainable, and also the way we conduct our businesses, because the impact on the environment is showing up in so many different ways. Also, uh, if we look at the second thing is the technology piece. If we look at technology, it can be a very big enabler in the current times. I can share from perspective of Microsoft that we are working with multiple businesses, not and also education specifically. During the last 6 weeks or so, we have enabled more than 200 schools and about 10,000 educators to embrace remote learning. And it also has several implications. Um, Many people were using technology for the first time for distant learning. Not about doing a course on MOOC, but how do you, as you rightly said, it's a challenge to replicate face-to-face learning through online methods. But one of our tools like Teams is provides that collaborative opportunities. So it's not just conducting a class through a video, but being able to collaborate on documents, being able to spark a discussion, being able to access resources even after the classroom engagement is over, bringing in experts to the classroom, and multiple pedagogical innovation. So management education, like others, will have to lean on on technology and make sure that how do we leverage it in a way that even despite various crises, the learning should not stop and the learning should continue to go on. And this will have implications not only in terms of investments in technology, but how it can lead to a whole transformation. How we can build up the for the faculty as well, how to train them, how to extend them. I think these are areas that leaders will have to think through, and the industry can play a very big role there. Certifications can play a very big role, and online sources of learning can play a very big role. So I can just say that, working with about 200 schools in the last 6 weeks and working with thousands of institutions over the last 5 years, we have seen amazing outcomes and technologies leveraged very well. And management education tends to uh, gain a lot from such interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jody. Thank you so much for your comments. Can I move to Mohammed Salman? I think let's get some views from him.
So, thank you very much, Dr. Mishra. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be a part of this panel, and I look forward to our discussions over the next hour and a bit. Now, in terms of the situation that we are confronted with, I'm sorry, I'll just start with a brief introduction of myself. So I have a deep association with both industry and with education, and hence I would try to bring both those perspectives to the table, and how perhaps the two need to be knit together perhaps more tightly than ever before if we are to counter the ravages of the virus. I'm a graduate of Delhi University, did my engineering from the old DCE, followed by my MBA from the Faculty of Management, and thereafter spent the next 30 plus years in the IT industry, growing through the ranks. When I started, it was an industry in its infancy, quite unlike the behemoth that it has transformed into today. So we've seen the complete evolution of this industry, and along with it, the all-important outsourcing model, which has brought so much of strength and power to our nation and to our entire ecosystem, basically. So I'll try and in the next couple of minutes just present my thoughts on how I view the challenges, specifically from the context of how it's likely to impact the careers of students who would be passing out of professional institutions. I've largely focused on B schools, but I'm sure a very similar situation would be pertinent for engineering colleges in the fields of law, pharmaceuticals, etc. So the way we look at it right now, the problem is indeed very acute. I mean, there is no need to perhaps restate that, but some data would obviously be meaningful. I just looked at some data which we've all seen over the past few days, and it causes very serious concern. As per the CMIE figures, the current level of unemployment in the country has shot up to more than 23% from a figure of just 8.4 before the lockdown started. In fact, this data is also slightly dated. If we take a fresh stab at it, maybe as of today, those numbers are likely to be even higher. And the urban unemployment has gone as high as close to 30%. So this obviously means that there has been a virtual ravaging as far as jobs are concerned. That entire careers landscape now is something that has to be relooked at. Having said that, I firmly believe, and I'm sure a lot of you would agree, that it also presents this opportunity, also presents a lot of pluses, where if we play our cards right, if we invest in the right kind of learning and the right kind of skills, then perhaps we can come out much stronger once the situation returns to normal. I know normal is a bad word. Bill Gates said it very appropriately. We should perhaps not look at any such thing as the old normal, quote unquote, coming back. It's going to be a new normal. and some of the preceding speakers have addressed it in terms of the social distancing, in terms of the predominance of the online mode over physical transactions as far as business is concerned. Now, some of the clear impacts that we see in the immediate context, I would just like to refer to them briefly. First of all, and this is very important, the current batch, the batch of students that has just passed out of professional institutions like these schools, and they've already got job offers in hand. By and large, surveys seem to indicate that the situation is not so bad for them. The reason being, most companies, particularly the larger ones, are very firm that they will be honoring all the offers that they have made. I mean, there are going to be some hits, of course, which are unavoidable under the circumstances that we are living in. But by and large, we do see a lot of the placements that have already taken place actually reaching fruition, and those students, joining and starting work. That said, the prospects for the new batch which will be coming in, and I think both Professor Rajiv Kumar and one or two of the other earlier speakers referred to, some of the changes that will be coming in. So there is going to be a lot of online component in the education, in how education is imparted. That will perforce create some issues, the way I see it, as far as the employability prospects are concerned. First and foremost, the sectors which are deeply impacted, and those are known to all: travel and hospitality, BFSI, retail, logistics, automotive.
Salman sir, just can you briefly summarize it, because we're running short.
Sure. I'll just wrap up. Thank you. So we see some of these sectors being very deeply impacted. However, there are other sectors like e-commerce, e-learning, etc., where we see a lot of new availability of opportunities as we go along. And the other significant thing, which I'll just briefly mention before I wrap up, we do see, as far as the compensation structures are concerned, we do see a larger variable component coming into the CTC figures for students who would be joining out of campus now. So these are some of my thoughts, and we'll talk about the rest later in terms of solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Now, we have another panelist, Mr. Bhattacharya. I think I deliberately brought him at the end.
Yeah.
The reason for that is that it's always to be in the end, because you have to speak now something new. Everything that you wanted to speak has been spoken by everybody.
So
that's,
thank you, Dr. Mishra. In fact, the advantage of coming in the end is most of the things have been already told. So you don't have much to speak. You will just finish off in 1 or 2 minutes. So kind of you, and thank you all of you for calling me here in this particular session. Thank you, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Dr. Vinny Johri, Dr. Kamlesh Mishra, Dr. Raj Agrawal, and Mr. Salman. I have been in the industry, and then I moved into academics, and one of the biggest, and I've been watching this particular COVID crisis with great amount of, I would call it intrigue. What has happened is that, this academic institution, especially the higher education in the business management field, we have been a feeder to the industry. Typically speaking, if there are, say, some 7,000-8,000 B schools which are there in India, so they are primarily feeders to the industry. Now, the challenge is the industry landscape changing. Now, with this COVID coming in, and I think there are two major things happening. First is, the social distancing thing is actually playing, what Mr. Salman said, it is going to play a major, devastating role, especially in terms of assembly line and shop floor arrangements, where in fact workers and all those manufacturing shop floor people, they will have to be reorganized, and probably you will have all sorts of other things coming in like automation and other things. Now, so social distancing is one aspect. The second thing is this particular COVID crisis has in fact made us aware that information is accessible from anywhere and everywhere. So now there is no limitation or foundation that you have to stick to your own faculty, your own professor, your own building. So physical infrastructure has probably become redundant. But the challenge that I see is that if there are 7,000 plus B schools, I think majority of them, the facilitators, the faculty there, and the students, they have to be trained to actually be digitally literate and agile enough to accept the manner in which this new education system is going to work. So I know for one that I represent a school called the School of Inspired Leadership. We have been using digital learning for the last 7-8 years. But I know for sure that there are many B schools and there are many other colleges which are there in tier 2 cities where probably internet bandwidth could be an issue, where probably the faculty do not have access to all sorts of databases, where probably there could be a problem in terms of hardware availability. So I think what Professor Rajiv Kumar was talking about, like the role of AICT probably would also have to look into these challenges, like how can at a short period of time build the capability of the faculty so that they can actually take on this new challenge. Otherwise, we will not be able to feed the industry. And if you are not able to feed the industry, I think we cannot allow our GDP to actually grow in the manner in which we want. So I think briefly I'll talk about this only because I think time is also short. With these words, I would want to summarize that primarily I'm looking at the biggest challenge of capability building amongst faculty. That is my limited point at this point of time.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. And we have come to the close, but I certainly want to give some opportunity for the participants to ask some questions that they may have. And being fair, I can steal some time from the next session because we have already had one speaker from the next session already on this. So I'm taking that liberty, Devidasanji. Also, we also had the keynote address, which is not going to be in the second.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Please go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, any questions that are there? Now we are ready to take those questions. All right. I don't see any question except one which says, what is the impact of COVID-19 on education sector? I don't know who is speaking. Okay. If there are any questions from the participants, you may please type it in so that we can answer those. If not, I have a lot of questions. Okay, let me pose a question that which is based on the what the three panelists have said and probably getting some idea. Dr. Raj Agarwal mentioned about blended learning model. Now, obviously, if we decide to go for a blended learning model post this scenario, that itself is a very big challenge. Because there are two things that I'm trying to look at, and I want you to address those. In a country with so much of digital divide, how do you ensure that there is parity across the major metros and rural and semi-urban areas, that everybody has access to that same kind of facility? That's the first one that I thought about. The second, if we are going to go for a blended learning model, and obviously online education was meant for masses so that you can reach masses, and therefore the cost of online education was always lower. How are we going to adjust our costs if we bring online education as part of face-to-face education also? Will there be a reduction in the cost? Because that's what it is supposed to be. And want your response to those thoughts. And maybe we can start with Mr. Bhattacharya. Hello. Yes, Professor Bhattacharya, your thoughts.
Yeah, so actually, you know, what you said was something which, in fact, I also had this question in mind, like, how do we see to it that we bring parity amongst on one side, there is the infrastructure issue, like whether all the regions in India have the uniform infrastructure or not. And the second thing is, you know, what is the start point? Like there are certain faculty members or certain people who would be they will have a head start because they're already there in, say, for example, metros, the mini petros, they would have a head start. So how do we see to it that we bring them together so that, and whose responsibility would this be? Because frankly speaking, most of the education institutions, they are not, you know, they are not one of those profiteering institutions. So they would be looking at, you know, some sort of support from AICTE or from the Government of India, UGC or other places that can they help in sort of bringing around some sort of a structure whereby, you know, their faculty, their staff, they can actually be trained and brought to that level. So I think to a large extent, the responsibility would lie on one side on the regulatory authorities, plus, you know, the management also of the institution has to take some responsibility. But I think primarily it has to be taken up by the regulator, and probably they can create some sort of a mechanism of cost sharing basis where, you know, the training and the capability building exercise can be conducted by them.
Okay. Salman sir, what's your thought on it?
So in terms of the inequities that you referred to, Dr. Mishra, I agree with what Professor Bhattacharya just said. I think the infrastructure building to accommodate students in the hinterland, including the smaller towns, including the rural areas, that is something where the government definitely would need to step in and make the requisite investments needed, because I do not see a lot of those investments coming in readily from the private sector at this point in time. So that would certainly require, you know, a very active intervention from the government, and I think those investments would be very, very well utilized if they could come in.
Okay, thank you. There is one question from Parag. Says, how can personal observation by faculty members of student development be substituted in the post-COVID environment? So obviously, he's assuming that we are moving into an online system. So his question is basically, there are a lot of observations that we make about the student development process. How do we do that in a situation if we go in a big way into an online system post-COVID? Dr. Raj Agarwal, you want to come on that?
Yes, this students' development currently, in my opinion, the kind of this technology, as far as this online education is considered, in India, this has yet to be developed. Although we have developed this proctored remote computer system for conducting examinations, tests. But about this pedagogy, this classroom teaching, there are few experiments, and that experiments, these are confined to few business schools. Even top-notch B schools, they are yet to develop this kind of technology. Few IIMs, they too have developed this kind of technology, and they are completely dependent on this technology provider. If we see this best program, this online program of the world, this Warwick is a highly rated program in the world. There is a complete approach, a complete system, which they call socially structured approach. And in this socially structured approach, this student development, this is a part. And this kind of model, this has been developed after doing extensive research. So here you see that in India, we have such a large education system where there's 40,000 colleges, 1,000 universities, and then this more than this 385 private universities. So it will take time. Obviously, this crisis is an opportunity. So we have to work. We have to do a little bit research also that how this system is going to be developed. What are going to be the outcome? So this outcome-based approach we have to adopt. And here you see that rushing on a thing rather than going on this outcome may create more problem when this kind of situation is going to be not.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, I'd like to add, Dr. Mishra, this question is something which, in fact, we realized long back, and maybe Salman also would agree with me. When the outsourcing world, actually, the business started happening, one of the most popular courses which we were conducting at SOIL and which was being taught by an American lady who used to come from New York, there was a course on, we used to call it, cross-cultural and virtual group processes. Now, in fact, the entire course was about how can you actually make people working in different geographies virtually come together, understand each other's culture, at the same time be emotionally, connected with each other. Now, this particular question of how can this thing happen online, I can also tell you that there is huge amount of research and some technologies have already come out where augmented reality and virtual realities are playing a major role, where probably you will have virtual teams which are actually coming together in a virtual reality room, and you can observe people and their behavior and you can make inferences. This is something which is actually now being practiced as a lab form in some of the parts of the world, and hopefully we will have to learn how to do this in a much faster manner in the education institutions also.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. I think one of the things that I just wanted to highlight is that as long as we believe that technology is only a tool, it is only an enabler, I think we should be fine. I think the problem is when we go beyond that. I think online learning platforms can be a great tool for students. They can help in looking at material that we want them to read in advance. We can give them a lot of video insights, a lot of things that we don't need to spend time in the classroom.
Right.
The transformation that should take place is that, like in the West, our students must come prepared, which is a big mind block in our system, and probably this will help us transform our students to be more prepared going through the learning material on the online system, and then we can bring them to the class and engage them into a more of a debate and discussion format, which could be very, very useful. Let me also take another question, and probably we will be running out of time very, very soon. Students are likely to pay the same, are less likely to pay the same tuition fee for as for on-campus programs. How can universities keep getting required revenues? Well, they will have to find new ways of doing it. And one of the new ways of finding more revenues is to move into research and consultancy. That's a worldwide phenomenon which all universities do. So universities that always depend only on tuition fee as a revenue, at some point will get into a problem. So they need to start diversifying and looking at more sources of revenue. I think it's also time for universities and institutions in India to begin to think of offering joint programs rather than offering joint programs with an American university. Why not here? So yes, in first year you're doing in NCR, and second year you're doing in Bangalore, right? So we can look at that also as another source of revenue. Anybody has any other ideas? Please welcome.
In fact, as far as the fees is concerned, I think, the one thing which I said during my opening remark was the physical infrastructure is something which would become redundant. So as of now, if you look into it, the regulatory authorities in India typically give you a sanction for a limited number of people, and that is restricted by the geography or the what you call it, area that you have. Now, when you actually move into online, then probably you would not be restricted by the numbers. And I remember there was one of the courses I recently was attending in Coursera, a course which was run by Stanford. There were more than 2 million people who had registered for that course. Now, this is amazing. This is amazing. Like if suppose, for example, there's a powerful facilitator, and if he can actually register a course online and you have millions of people registering for that course, I think fee becomes almost like a redundant. I remember at one point of time, Cisco said they wanted to come out with a $1 university. And that was because they said that my best professors will actually teach globally. Now, this is something that can happen. You don't know because the game is still wide open.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. My only concern is only one, that soon after we we're out of this, the regulator may say you can't do it. That you cannot offer online. And if you are going to offer, you come to us first and seek permission, and that takes them for a toss again. So what has been done so fast in this hurry, let's not take it as a serious shift. This is a new source for the regulator, and they are going to use it. It's not going to be that easy. But I hope that sense will prevail everywhere, because I think it's good for us as a nation to move from a system of regulation to climate control. I think that's a better way of going.
Nicely said. Yes.
Yes, Raj, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, this is a nicely coined word, this private control.
I said it's a climate control. You should be able to ensure that the temperatures are good for everyone, right?
Yes.
There is no need to regulate anything.
Yes.
Even in a free market system, there are climate control mechanisms. You cannot damage the society, right? Those have to be there in any system. So thank you all so much for all your help today coming on this panel. It was amazing. I learned a lot from all of you, and thank you so much. And Mr. Devidasan, thank you for all your support and all the background work that you did so meticulously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mishra, it has been an illuminating discussion. Thank you, sir. You've taken time from the busy schedule of the Vice Chancellor, being a Vice Chancellor with the Rishi University. You have come. And there were so many different types of problems, which is, you have all captured, right from Rajiv Kumar to Vinny to Mr. Salman, who spoke about the unemployment and the impact of COVID going to create on them. Dr. A.N. actually, Professor A.N. Bhattacharya speaking about the lack of IT infrastructure, etc. in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, etc. are all pointers where we can work. So thank you so much for sharing this program. I would also like to thank the other panelists, Dr. Raj Agarwal, Director IMA, of course, Professor Bhattacharya, and of course, Professor Salman. Dr. Vinny has left because she said she has some urgent, she has to go urgently. So thank you so much. And if the panel is comfortable, I think we can actually take up the next session, where, which will be chaired by Professor A.N. Bhattacharya. We will be discussing about the solution part in this panel. Can we move ahead to the second session?
Yeah, I think we can.
We can. And I would request all the other panelists are already there to continue with the next panel. We would now request Professor A.N. Bhattacharya to take over the session. And Professor A.N. Bhattacharya, being somebody who is always described as a passionate teacher and a trainer and a friendly consultant. He's also incidentally a dear friend of mine. I have had the opportunity to work with the gentleman. He's an agricultural graduate to begin with, majoring in genetics. And of course, he did his MBA from the famous Banaras Hindu University. He has almost 2 decades of experience in the industry. The man who knows and understands the pulse of the consumer, therefore that makes him a great teacher when it comes to marketing, etc. He has been an ILM, dean, where he worked for some time. So I would actually request Professor A.N. Bhattacharya to now please chair the second panel and please discuss the solution part of it. Over to you, Professor A.N. Bhattacharya.
Thank you, Professor Devidasan. It was wonderful of you to have introduced me in a manner which I do not deserve. In fact, you said a bit too much about me. Having said that, I welcome my panelists here. I have with me Dr. Kamlesh Mishra, who has actually been a mentor to me for quite a long period of time. Mr. Salman Mohammad, who has been actually a guiding force in many of the forums that I have been a part of. Dr. Raj Agrawal, who was also my boss at one point of time. And, I would like to open this particular session with a few, thoughts that I have in my mind. So predominantly, if you look into it, there are three direct stakeholders of the higher education system in India. One is the student, one is the faculty, and the third is the industry. And apart from these three main stakeholders, we also have the regulatory bodies and the accreditation bodies. Now, if you look into this current situation, where in fact, I call this situation unprecedented in the living memory of human lives, it has never happened that we have actually seen lockouts, a worldwide lockout or lockdown of this sort. Now, on one side, we have students where in fact the learning would be impacted. And when I say impacted means the method in which they are actually getting their knowledge, the accessibility to that particular knowledge is something which is being affected. Rightly or wrongly, this is something I'm leaving it to the panelists. The second stakeholder is the faculty. The pedagogy which was there, I remember when I started initially teaching, I used to use, a blackboard and a chalk. Then came the transparency sheets. Then came overhead projectors. And then came PPTs. And then now you have online courses and all those things happening. So technology has been, changing in a linear fashion. But somehow this particular COVID has actually forced us to think in an exponential manner. I really do not know how, in fact, a large body of people who consider themselves to be faculty, they can be trained overnight to meet the needs of the students, the learning needs of the students. The third most important stakeholder is the industry, which I said the educational institutions feed to the industry. Now, I actually feel, and probably Salman would agree with me, the industrial landscape in India is actually, or rather worldwide, it is actually going to change dramatically. Now, in the sense, like there are some industries which probably might actually change, completely. And there are others where probably the new sectors would come up. So maybe like, for example, there are some of the sectors like maybe e-commerce, supply chain, maybe, telehealth or telemedicine, or, people like industries like entertainment. Look, these would actually boom. So I do not know whether the B schools, they have yet curated their courses in such a manner that they can feed to such industries. That is number one. Number two, apart from these three stakeholders, I feel that the regulatory bodies and the accreditation bodies, they will also have to look into the manner in which they are giving these accreditations and these approvals. Because maybe now physical infrastructure or the number of headcounts might not be something which is important. It is probably the outcome which probably might actually be more important. So whether you have a 5-acre campus or a 1-acre campus, it might actually probably not be of any significance, because I remember Kellogg City campus is actually just maybe 1 or 2 acres. Now, how can we actually look at this particular situation also, that maybe tomorrow we can have virtual universities? If you can have virtual banks, why can't we have virtual universities? And I'm just thinking in terms, I'm thinking aloud, I don't know, there has to be some, regulatory, body to look at, whether they are doing justice to the whole, act of education. So, I would like to, open this particular session with these thoughts, keeping the student, faculty, industry on one side, and on the second side, the regulatory bodies and the role of the accreditation bodies in this new post-COVID era. And I would like initial thoughts. Maybe I'll start with Dr. Kamlesh Mishra. What does he say? Because he has a long stint in the academic world, so probably he can give us some more insights into this.
So, my thought on post scenario, I think the biggest challenge that we will have is to actually look at how much time is it going to take for us to get ready with the new model of higher education. We are right now between something that we had and something that we hope to have. We don't know where it's going to land up. The reason I'm saying that it's not going to happen immediately, that on 18th we open and on 19th we have a new higher education model that is available for everybody to adapt to. It's a major disruption. Because it is not only about a policy, it's about training of the mind, training of the faculty members, training of the students, and for everybody to adapt to whatever system is going to emerge. So it's not going to be so easy for us, because at this point, we're all confused. What to do and how to do it. There are a lot of advantages that people talk about online learning. We talk about blended learning. We talk about flipped learning models. There have been models, right? But there is one thing that is certainly there for us to think, that we should evaluate the risk of any model that we are going to start to come up. Because we know that online learning was initially started for adult educators. For those people who were employed, had 8-10 years of work experience, and their degree or not having a higher degree was becoming a barrier to their advancement in career, and therefore we came up with online system of granting degrees so that those people could avail that. India, unfortunately, was much behind in terms of online degrees. Instead of that, we started what we call correspondence courses. So for us, the paper correspondence course was the online degree that it was in other countries. So we actually did not go to that model when we really had the time. And if that was the case, then a lot of institutions would have already built their online backbone. Right now in the United States, almost all universities, they have just announced that their summer program is all going to be now online, 100%. It is possible that in fall also they may declare an online system. Why is it easy for them to do it? Because everybody has the backbone. Within the American university system, there is a provision that a student can take a minimum of one course online as a credit course from within the university system. So all universities already had that system. They already, and it's not about Zoom. It's about the online platform that has to be there, right? Which Dr. Jory talked a little bit about, that it should allow for collaboration, it should allow for video interaction, it should allow for classrooms, it should allow all those aspects of online that should be there. So I think now one other aspect besides all this, even if you decided, who will you do it? My pass the fourth problem. Do we have the faculty who are trained in online? And in fact, if you look at the Western countries, online faculty is very different. And there are some faculty who are only online faculty. They don't do face-to-face teaching. In fact, they just don't like face-to-face teaching. We don't have that system. So our faculty will have to really get trained on online delivery of course. All our curriculum has to be restructured for an online delivery. And they are completely different. They are not the same. So we will have a lot of work that needs to be done to come up with a new model of delivery, which may be a blended model or whatever model that we come up. I know 100% that it is not going to be online. Because the regulator allowing nahi karega, UGC will also not allow, it's not going to happen. But there may be some elements that will be there, but it will clearly say in order to get an online degree, you need the approval of X, Y, Z. Right now, only MIT has it. Right? So I think that's where my main issue is, that how much time will it take for us to really come up with a delivery model which is acceptable, of which we can assess the risk and we can assess the opportunities at the same time.
So, Dr. Mishra, can I actually, from a solutions perspective, like the fact that you said how much time will it take and who is going to do this capability building exercise?
Yeah.
So, like this is the problem side of it. From a solution perspective, do you think at this point of time, the industry can come back and actually teach the faculty? The industry probably would be, a few steps ahead of academics in terms of online and digital.
No, industry will be able to help in the transition to online. Obviously, they can do a better job because there is a commercial angle to it. So they can do it better than educational institutions. And I think they have already started working on that kind of model. So
yes.
I think already a lot of learning management systems were there, LMS were there. They are being improved now to accommodate those things that were missing for an online system. New ones are already being developed, and I've had so many discussions with some of them who are working on it. So I think that industry will be very fast in coming up with online solutions. The issue is that are our institutions in this kind of a financial situation right now to adapt to that shift in that technology? Because that's also going to be expensive. It's not just buying that software, it's also having the hardware and the structure that is required. So that can be crores also if we have to go on that kind of a mode. And maybe many institutions may not be ready for that at this point after paying salaries without getting any fees and all these things. But yes, I think the role of industry will be there. I think we will come out. It's not that, but it's not going to be a quick fix. It will take some time. Faculty also will adjust. It's not that. See, we Indians are very good at this. When we are put under pressure, we do very well.
Yeah.
It is only when we don't have pressure we away from it. So I am 100% confident the solution will come.
Yeah. In fact, human beings are one of the most resilient creatures God has created, and probably I think we will come out of this fast, thankfully. Now, coming to Mr. Mohammad Salman, in fact, your insights would actually be very helpful in terms of how is this, huge gap that we are expecting, the industry expectations and what we have been teaching all throughout now. Will there be a major change, and how is the academic world going to gear up? And as Dr. Mishra said, how fast can we actually gear up? And how are we going to, understand what are the needs of the industry? Do you think this could be something which could be a challenge, or is it an opportunity for most of the academic institutions?
So thanks, Professor Bhattacharya. I positively look at it as an opportunity. I think Dr. Mishra also referred to some significant transformation that is required. And I think the contours of that transformation are very clear. To be honest with all of you, this process of, looking at perhaps unique differentiators for an educational institute vis-a-vis its standing in the corporate sector or the ability of the corporate sector to absorb its students, this process had started even before COVID-19 took over. So talk of, going into areas such as digital, analytics, technology-driven pieces in AI, machine learning, etc. This had been going on even earlier. But what has happened now is that it has become an imperative. I don't think educational institutions can wait anymore. So industry now, and as we've seen over the last 6 odd weeks that everybody's been in lockdown and a lot of folks have been working from home, and I believe some sectors such as IT, consulting are being reasonably successful with that model. I think we will have to now start looking at a similar model going forward. I think one of the speakers in the previous session had referred to TCS having already declared that close to 40 to 50% of its delivery would continue to take place from home as opposed to, people coming to work in offices. So that process has already started. So in a nutshell, if I was to summarize, digital is going to be the centerpiece. And when I say digital, I'm not just referring to the technologies that build up the digital model. I'm also referring to a change in mindset. I think Dr. Mishra referred to it briefly when he was just speaking. That change in mindset will become very, very critical if we are to succeed, and institutions such as B schools, engineering colleges, etc., are to succeed with the digital model. Now, some of the other things that have become increasingly clear is that even in areas such as human resources, marketing, which you of course know very well, even these traditional areas of management are no longer going to remain the same. So when we used to talk to companies even before the virus hit, they were telling us very clearly that they need students who are coming out of B schools to understand how can they use data to improve processes in each of these. And how can they indeed use data to run a lot of these processes? In HR, for instance, complete talent acquisition process, learning and development process. How can you use analytics, analysis of past data to do it? So therefore, all of these areas, be it finance, HR, marketing, they will see an increased influx of the digital model, analytics, and a lot of these technologies. And one final point before I sign off, I'll be cognizant of my time this time. One final thing I wanted to add, the criticality of strong communication skills in B school graduates will perhaps never be greater than it is now. It is an imperative, an absolute imperative, as they used to say in cricket, or they still do. You can't hide a poor fielder anymore. Well, I would say the same about the B school graduate. It will be very difficult to hide if you do not carry good communication skills, which means the ability to absorb what is being communicated, to effectively communicate it to your teams, to have strong listening skills. All of these will become extremely critical if we are to do most of our business in the online mode, as seems to be the case right now. So companies will necessarily look at people who are fast learners, who are self-driven, and who do not require too much of guidance going forward. So these are some of my thoughts in terms of the changes that we'll need to bring.
Very well put, Salman. I just wanted to tell you one thing, like till now, if you look into it, most of the B schools, and I'm not talking about the ones which are there in, say, metropolitan cities, most of the B schools, for them, digital and AI, ML and all such courses, they are basically icing on the cake. Now, in fact, in the new post-COVID era, the cake has to be that.
Absolutely.
In fact, when we talk of marketing, I think you cannot think of any sort of a, physical movement of salespeople and acquiring customers. You will have to move into an absolute different world where acquisition is happening, through a digital media using analytics. Do you think we have the capability to train all these, 10,000 odd B schools having, maybe on an average, 50 faculty or 25 faculty each? Where do we get these trainers? Like if you have to teach them on machine learning, AI or IoT, who actually will give us these trainers? I don't know whether there's any, stock from where we can actually pull out.
So that's a fantastic question, Professor Bhattacharya. And my brief answer to that would be a much stronger partnership with the corporate sector is now also an imperative, for this very reason, which you have just, that question which you just asked. I do not see in the academic world today the requisite expertise and practical experience with some of the platforms and technologies that we are talking about. Therefore, it will become absolutely necessary to have close partnership. And there are a number of those options. Dr. Vinny Jory has just moved off out of this discussion, unfortunately. So Microsoft is offering a lot of such programs and platforms, as is Google, IBM, a host of other organizations. So institutions, B schools will have to build deep partnerships and make sure that the expertise that already resides in the IT industry, in the corporate sector, that expertise can be utilized to train not just, I mean, not just to conduct programs for students, but more importantly, to bring the faculty up to speed.
Thank you. Thank you, Salman. Now, the most difficult piece I would actually have for Dr. Raj Agrawal, and the point that I would like to ask him and ask for solutions from him is, what would be the role of the regulatory bodies and the accreditation bodies now? Because I feel that in this new, suppose hypothetically, if it becomes 100% online, and if physical infrastructure is not something which is a limiting factor, what is the role of a regulatory body in that case? We can probably have virtual universities, and we can actually do away with the, heavy investment which education institutions have to make on land and property. Do you think this sort of a thing can actually work, especially in a country where, education is pretty expensive? In India, if you want a good quality education, it is pretty expensive. Will this actually democratize the way education is being seen at in India?
Actually, you see that we have to see education in a context of a vision and mission. Yeah? This Knowledge Commission report, fine, one may agree 100% or not, but one may agree in this particular respect that there was a vision within this report, or it was not, but it was thought that there could be a vision. Right? Now, here you see, I'll take this example. Like in my college days, university days, sometimes there was a closure of universities for 2 to 3 months due to violence. And 76 in Lucknow, this has happened. And when I went to Allahabad, then this has again happened. So here, this extension of this session, this is only hardly for 15 days or 1 month. Instead of July, you are going to start the session in the month of August. Right? So this online education, in my opinion, this is a kind of this temporary relief. And when we are going to talk about this education and specifically industry, then we have to see industry as a whole. It is not only that few corporates, they are going to employ the people, or they are going to employ the management graduates. Now, this scope of this outcome of this education, management education in terms of employability, this has changed considerably. There are large number of startups. There are large number of small businesses. Now, here at present in India, this 11 crore people, they are employed in MSME sector. Somewhere around 55 crore people, they are depending on their livelihood on this MSME sector, right? This startup in the few good institutions like this IIT Mumbai, this 50% this graduating students, they have not gone for multinationals. They have gone for their own startup. So this scenario is also going to be changed. And here, it is also very, very important. The courses like this MIT, Harvard, and other top-notch institutes which are offering, which have made mandatory by various public sector units, go for these kind of courses for your promotion. So these are typically online courses. Typically, and whenever you are free, even you go on this WTO site, or if you go on this UNTAD site, so there are this 100 courses which you can do by sitting home. By sitting, their purpose and objective and outcome is different. Outcome is different. That you see that in one specific area, this kind of skill or this kind of knowledge has to be added. Fine, it is good enough. Add this kind of knowledge online. This Institute of this Corporate Affairs, they offer this course of this directors online, and this is a mandatory course by the law. And you have to pass, so fine, those who are working, those who are on a senior position, those who are company's director, they can go ahead and do this particular course. Okay. So this is what that online education, we cannot generalize. We cannot generalize that in this country, this much of this enrollment, this infrastructure, this quality of education, we were not able to develop the quality of education in face-to-face program. So forget about this online program, right? Now, here you see that now in management education, again, there are more than 3,000 institutes in our country. And within this country, again, a diversity. There is a PGDM institute. And I always say that what is the one great contribution of this AICT after liberalization, that before 1991, there were hardly 4 good institutes in management. Now, out of 3,000, there are at least 100 good institutes. 100 good institutes and few good private universities also. Yeah? Good private universities. So this is the biggest contribution from 3 to 100. But when you talk about this 3,000 plus institute, then obviously this 100 is quite less. 100 is quite less. So here you see that where faculty is well trained, where there is an infrastructure, fine. There are the courses like this business analytics course, or I'll give you example. We have introduced this financial modeling course. We have introduced this in collaboration with Moody. And then we have introduced this course, this public procurement in collaboration of World Bank. And again, this contractual dispute course in collaboration of this World Bank. Now, here you see that segment, market segment, where this kind of course was required. So they were requiring this kind of course in a blended learning mode. So it was this blended learning that was a need-based approach, right? So where faculty is prepared, where students are prepared, where infrastructure is there, then this blended learning. And when there is a need that only online means that you are free from office for 2 hours or 1 hour, then this online, right? But this is covering a very small segment of the country. Small segment of the country. So this face-to-face education, somehow, unless until we are not making a transformation, there is a lot of talk, and we too have done in collaboration with the top-notch organizations, a lot of researches on this emerging technology, whether this is AI, whether this is this digital, etc. You see that how many people they have adopted. This 90, we have done one survey, 90% of SMEs, they don't know how to use app.
Sir, excuse me, one minute.
So,
excuse me, sir, 1 minute. I just wanted to tell you, here actually the question is not about choice. It is about something which has become a must. It is a necessity. You know, because the environment has thrust upon us that you cannot sit together and study. You know, the recent guidelines which has come from the Ministry of Home Affairs, it says that students together cannot sit, there has to be social distancing.
It is a kind of immediate relief for 1 month or 2 months or maybe 6 months. This relief may disrupt the system for coming 6-7 months, I agree, right? But this is not going to be the objectivity. This is not going to be the purpose. Otherwise, we are going to play with our education system. We were playing earlier, and we, by having this online education, we will play in a very bad way, and we will spoil this system completely.
Professor Bhattacharya, I think, can I just come in here?
Yeah, sure.
See, I honestly tend to agree with Raj. You know, I think this is a stopgap arrangement that the regulators have allowed us because there is no other option left. And they did not want a huge number of people bouncing on them at this time. I think this will not continue as much as I can think about. And I feel that maybe it should not also. Probably we'll come back to where we were in a little revised version and take a lot of time to start developing the infrastructure and facilities. And then, you know, you have 10 to 15% that can be online, and slowly these things will happen. Yes, but however, I also agree that going ahead in the future, will virtual universities exist? The answer is yes. The time frame, we don't know how long it will take, But yes, virtual universities will exist. And if you ask me which will be the first virtual university of India, I'm willing to bet on that. It should be Indira Gandhi National Open University.
Yeah.
Okay.
Able to transform themselves into a virtual university. Second institution that can go virtual is National Open School. They can go virtual, complete virtual. They also have that because they are already designed. They can use this technology to go virtual with whatever they are doing. But having a completely virtual university per se as a new model, it will take time. It will take time, but probably it will happen.
So, you know, I wish what you're saying comes out to be correct. I simply draw, you know, a parallels when I look at, you know, the banking industry, and when I see like, you know, the Paytms of the world and the Google Pays of the world, they actually, in fact, they snatch away a large chunk of the business from the traditional banking system, and they finally move into, you know, a complete banking retail, you know, solutions provider. And now, in fact, most of us, in fact, all of us, we probably are in some of the other payment banks we are actually associated with. And we find it more convenient, and it is actually much more safer now.
Yeah.
So I hope that, you know, what you are saying comes true, but I have a hunch that probably technology will actually move to a stage where probably the hindrances that we see in a virtual university would actually vanish, and we will actually have a better learning environment in a virtual environment as compared to a physical environment, because it is easier to monitor, it is easier to cross-check, it is actually much more updated. There are many more advantages. And the biggest thing is it is actually now democratic. It can actually reach to 130 crore people if you want across the country. So from that perspective, I think there is a huge stake that the government also has in this. So I don't know, like the jury is still wide open.
And Professor N.
Yeah.
Soumitra, this side. I have a question. I have a question for all the panelists. MBA program specifically, if you talk about it, is purely industrial.
Yeah.
So you see, do you see a paradigm shift in the industry itself, just like it has happened in the after World War II? So if the paradigm shifts, profiles will shift, everything will shift, then new skill set may emerge. You know, so how management program professionals see it coming?
I think Salman would be the best person to answer this. I think he has been answering this earlier also.
Yeah. So the paradigm shift that you are referring to, Soumitra, has already arrived. It's actually there. If you look at the past 6 weeks and, you know, the fact that there are organizations which have been able to maintain at least a certain level of productivity and output. And I'm largely, of course, referring to, at this moment, the IT, the outsourcing sector, maybe parts of the consulting business. All of them have managed to, in a very quick frame of time, adapt to this changed environment. Now, all of us would eagerly like to see things gradually go back to the way it was, quote unquote, but it is very difficult to foresee that happening based upon the data that is confronting us, the horrendous figures with you know, respect to the spread of the virus, etc. So to answer your question specifically, I think that paradigm shift is already there, and these schools in particular need to adapt to this paradigm shift on a war footing right away. So I have, for instance, seen over the past few weeks, a lot of the B schools add, you know, programs related to digital courses, much stronger focus on analytics, etc. So that thinking is there, but as Professor Bhattacharya said earlier, this will now need to perhaps become the cake rather than just the icing on the cake. I think that is what we are looking to see.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Sure. Good. Any more questions from any of those participants? And if there are any questions on the YouTube, I think Mr. Devidasan, you can check that also. We can take a few. We have another, say, around 18, 19 minutes. We can take a few questions if there are any.
There was much of a small technical problem on my side, so I'm unable to see the YouTube. But I suppose you know, doesn't seems to be much of questions out there, even though there are a lot of people.
No, hello, sir. Hello, sir. I have some questions from YouTube.
Yeah,
I want
please.
to ask it specifically.
Yeah.
Like there are questions. One question from Mr. Parvez: how will you inculcate behavioral skills under online mode of education? Second, Hemlata ji said, virtual internship for marketing students is a big challenge that they are facing. You know, and there are certain questions like how COVID is going to impact the IT sector. What will be the evaluation methods for MBA students now? These are the primary questions. There are a few more.
So as far as virtual internships are concerned, I think there was a question on virtual internships.
Virtual internship and the behavioral aspects, how we inculcate
First
online.
question is very good. Behavioral skills. This is very good. Behavioral skill.
Yeah, how we impart behavioral skills online.
So in fact, I'll just tell you, and maybe some of us can actually add to it. Most of the psychometric tests that we are doing currently are actually online, and the instruments that are used are so powerful that in fact you can actually judge the personality of an individual through a questionnaire. And so understanding the current state of an individual is something which is very easy. Now, as far as transformation in the personality of an individual and change in the behavior of an individual, how it is done behaviorally, I think there are techniques which I actually talked earlier about how to work in virtual teams and how to in fact work in environments where in fact you are not physically proximal to each other, but at the same time you are working together, and then understanding the behavior through maybe through the written context that you have or the audio speech that you hear. That is something which is being done by many of these companies, and a couple of companies in India, they've also started doing this. In fact, we are also at SOIL, we are doing what is called a development center, which is a virtual development center, which we are doing from 11th to 14th for a set of people here. So those assessment is something which has become virtual as of now. We can do it. But now, as far as the change is concerned, I think changes and the interventions we actually, probably will have to gear up and improve that. So that is something which is still work in progress, I think.
And the second question, they talk about virtual for market sales primarily, which is a
Yeah,
field job.
Here I
So
like
that
to add.
experience,
Here I like to add. Actually, we are emphasizing too much on technology rather than knowledge, or rather than outcome of the education. Here, technology could not be a substitute of quality education. Technology is simply a process. Now, here you see that most of these changes by introducing the technology, which we have seen in a case of this outcome, we have very well see that number of scams and specifically in financial sector are increasing very rapidly, right? So this is also one of the findings, that when we are using more and more technology, so how we are going to impart this ethical part, how we are going to impart this behavioral part, behavioral skill part. So there is a need to do this researches. There is a need to again find it out that how there could be a good combination of this technology with the human intervention, right kind of this human intervention.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think technology obviously is an enabler. It is actually just an enabler. Yes.
Another question is
Yeah, Dr.
the final question.
Hello.
Mr.
Professor Bhattacharya, I just was trying to add something on this virtual internship.
Yeah.
I think I'm beginning to agree more and more with Raj Agarwal. He'll have to take me out for dinner. I think in terms of virtual internship, we are stretching it too far. We are assuming that this condition is going to exist forever. No, just wait. Just wait. Let the economic activity start, and then you try and get a virtual internship. Nobody is going to touch you with a 10-foot pole also, right? Industry doesn't work that way. Industry right now And education institutions that the way they are right now, they have no options. And just like what we are doing online, right? The day that this is all going to shut down and economic activity goes on to its bank, you will see that even if you try for online internship, you're never going to get it. That's not the way it happens. So let's not go with the assumption that all these things are done forever. This is the way it is going to be. We're going to come back where we left. Yes, maybe changes in format. And I totally agree with what Raj is saying. Please leave technology. Do not pay too much emphasis on technology. It's a boat on which we will sit and cross the river. That's all. It's an enabler, and let's leave it there. We are making technology a god, which is very, very dangerous. The human touch in education, the ability to touch the heart of the student, the ability to transform him, the ability to sit with him, talk to him, and share your experience, technology can never do it. And I think it's important to maintain that this one, the technology will be there, we'll use it somewhere for certain purposes. I'm more inclined to going with this thought that, okay, this is all just a temporary phase. We will go back. Again, our students will go into industry. They will be working. They will be doing their internship. They will be standing on trucks on the back and with Pepsi and going to the distribution channels. Every life will become normal.
So, I would definitely want to see that thing happen. And nice discussion. Thank you, Dr. Mishra. Thank you, Dr. Raj Agarwal. Thank you, Salman. I hand it over back to Professor Devidasan.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. But I have one thought which has actually come into my mind. Dr. Mishra spoke about the delivery models. When we talk about delivery models, of course, you have got the curriculum and the technicality and the professional competency which we'll be teaching. Again, this is an indicative of how we are going to manage the behavioral patterns. For example, how do you resolve the conflicts? The emotional intelligence, which forms the integral part of the person when he develops his leadership skills. So I think one of the challenges would be how you are going to articulate it, incorporating these facets into the delivery model. I suppose this is going to be a major challenge. Whether it is caliper or in psychometric profiling, that gives an interview of the candidate concerned. But are we really in a position to actually manage behavioral aspects? This is number one. If at all it is possible, how are we going to do it? As Professor Raj said, that perhaps there is a requirement of more research into this. And also I was actually wondering loudly, when this lockout is going to be over, when maybe after 6 months, 1 year or 2 years, we do not know the time, we find a cure for this COVID or a vaccine for it. It might take a while. And when this bunch of students who would be growing up or learning or taking degrees online, how will they fare with the other students who have been exposed to a physical environment of face-to-face classroom learning?
Maybe for this, we'll have to have another webinar. So our time's up, so I think we'll have to have another webinar on this.
All right, then. That brings to the close of this session. I must thank you, Professor Bhattacharya, and Professor Dr. Kamlesh Mishra, Dr. Raj Agarwal, giving some of the fine pointers. And of course, Professor Salman, thank you all so very much. And Dr. Vinny is not there. I would like to say thanks to her also. So I must say a great thank you to all the participants who have joined us, and look forward to conduct such regular webinars which are actually useful to the people, and particularly to the students, where we are responsible for. So thank you so much. Once again, on behalf of Carving Talent, a big namaste to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
की बातें होंगी अब जो बोलोगे आ जाएगा